Oh, Leonardo, if you're not joining the webinar, speaking right away, can you turn your video off?
All right, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to all of our distinguished speakers, guests, and of course, colleagues. My name is Sonja van Lieshout, and I have the honor to moderate today Global Business Forum on the SDGs high-level panel session. We have gathered this morning virtually at the very start of the second week of what is going to be an interesting high-level political forum, with a mission to showcase on how businesses are driving progress across the full breadth of sustainable development and why it is critical to leverage this momentum to forge partnerships, deeper partnerships, align private sector innovation with public priorities, and ensure that no one is left behind in our collective pursuit of the 2030 agenda. Kindly note that this session is being recorded. Therefore, we ask all participants to keep their microphones muted when they are not speaking and to ensure a smooth and respectful exchange. The chat box is of course available for you should you wish to share any questions, comments, ideas, or suggestions with the panelists. These will be addressed in the designated Q&A segments. Today's special event is co-convened by the United Nations Global Compact, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the International Organization of Employers, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which forms together the SDG Global Business Forum today. Together, we will delve into an engaging dialogue with our panelists on enabling a policy environment that maximizes the private sector's contribution to the implementation of the UN SDGs. My own company, for example, which is Randstad, which is a HR services company, a global HR services company, is committed to the UN Women's Empowerment Principles by signing the CEO agreement and statement of support. This provides guidance to businesses on gender equity and women's empowerment in the workplace, the marketplace, and community. With specific and designated programs in countries such as Germany, India, Netherlands, and Spain and the US, Randstad has been able to support over 1,000 women already in their search for meaningful and decent work across the globe. It is therefore that it's so closely aligned to our Partner for Talent strategy. With that, we are going to welcome our first speaker, and I will be happily providing the floor to Mr. Li Junhao, the Undersecretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, to deliver his pre-recorded opening remarks. Mr. Li is a seasoned diplomat with over 30 years of experience and has served in various sectors and in various senior roles within China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the United Nations. His work focuses on promoting international cooperation for sustainable development, multilateral dialogue, and inclusive policy frameworks to support the SDGs globally. Mr. Li, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, business leaders, dear colleagues, it is my privilege to open the 2025 SDG Global Business Forum, a timely gathering in a defining year for sustainable development. We meet at a time of the urgent cascading crisis. Yet we also see the bold innovation and a growing will to act among governments and stakeholders. The 2025 World Economic Situation and Prospects Report by the UNDESA indicates a course for cautious optimism, with the signs pointing to a more stable global economy. Many countries are slowing inflation without straining labor markets, which signals economic resilience. But this progress is fragile. Growth remained uneven, shaped by fragmentation, rising trade restrictions, and the deepening inequalities within and across the countries. Meanwhile, poverty, conflict, and displacement continue to affect the millions. According to the SDG Progress Report of 2025, the world is making moderate progress on 35% of 139 assessed SDG targets. Nearly half showed insufficient progress, and alarmingly, 18% have regressed since 2015. The path forward demanded urgent collective actions. Dear colleagues, partnerships are consistently recognized as the key drivers of the progress in SDG implementation, a trend evident in the national commitments at the 2023 SDG Summit and the country experiences presented at this year's high-level political forum. At the heart of the 2030 agenda is a recognition that the partnerships are essential to progress. In the recently adopted Seville Commitment, member states reaffirmed this message by committing to collaborating meaningfully with all stakeholders, including civil society and the private sector. Whether through the South-South, North-South, or triangular cooperation or collaboration with international financial institutions, these efforts can all be strengthened by engaging the private sector to scale the solutions, drive the innovation, and mobilize investment. The Pact for the Future, adopted last year, delivers a clear message that is, partnerships are central to achieving our global ambitions. It calls for greater private sector engagement in addressing global challenges and emphasizes accountability in advancing UN frameworks. Business must be central to the solutions we build. I urge all business partners to actively shape our collective financing efforts through the platforms like the Financing for Development Business Sector Steering Committee and the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance. As we looked to the Second World Summit for Social Development this November in Qatar, the focus is on building more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable societies that leave no one behind. And the business must play a central role in that effort. Let us work together to strengthen partnerships and accelerate the change we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for setting the scene for our first panel discussion. This session will help identify concrete challenges and opportunities and practical solutions to optimize the contributions of businesses to sustainable development. What capacities and policies are needed to drive private sector actions and deliver results on the ground in support sustainable development? Let's unpack these questions with our guests today. I will invite our distinguished panelists to join me on the virtual screen right now. So we have with us today an extremely distinguished group of panelists. His Excellency, Mr. Bob Rae, who is the permanent representative of Canada and the president of the UN Economic and Social Council. We have with us today Mrs. Sanda Ojambo, Assistant Secretary General, CEO, and Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact. Next up is Mr. Roberto Soares Santos, Secretary General of the International Organization of Employers. And last but certainly not least, we have with us today Mr. Peter Bakker, who is the President and the CEO of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So in the interest of keeping to our time, each panelist will have 4 minutes on the first question, and at the end, a rapid fire of 1 minute each. I will first start with Mr. Ambassador Ray. Mr. President, you have chaired the UN Economic and Social Council throughout a pivotal year for SDG follow-up, including the Partnership Forum, the Youth Forum, the STI Forum, and most recently, the Financing for Development Forum. From your perspective, what key lessons or policy signals are emerging across these intergovernmental platforms that could help guide more effective business engagement in delivering tangible results on the ground? Mr. Bob Ray.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to join you. And let me get right away to your question. I think the major consensus that's growing is a recognition among member states around the world that business investment is key to their future, to our collective future. And we often talk a language about what member states have to do. We often see the UN as a place where politics prevails. But I think we all need to understand that the historic examples are very clear that China and India, other countries that are achieving breakthroughs, Indonesia, Vietnam, we look to the other countries that have gone quickly into embracing the market, to embracing the need to connect with business in terms of what planning they might want to do, what markets and what opportunities they see in their country. And also, following from that comes, I think, a much wider and greater willingness on the part of countries to become investment ready, to create the conditions in their laws, in their institutions, in their general political stances, the training of labor, education, and so forth, where we all connect with what is clear to, I think, everyone, and that is that the key to getting out of poverty is to attract business investment and to embrace the partnership between government and the market, which in every part of the world is what has allowed wealth to be created and to be successful. So I think there needs to be, I think that trend is very clear, that need for alignment between all the policies that will be required at the local level, at the national level to attract investment. And I think it's critical for business to embrace the partnership, to embrace the willingness on the part of governments to engage and to listen to what's required in order to allow major investments to go forward. And it's important for us to recognize that in some cases it will require both public and private capital. In some cases, private capital can do it on its own. And I think that's core. And the other advice that I would always have for people is be sure to establish partnerships at the local level. Be sure to use local companies in helping with the supply chain. The more we can add value locally, the more governments will be responsive and will be keen to participate in a successful investment. But I would just come back to my first point, because I think it is quite fundamental. When you look around the world, there is a dramatic sea change that's taken place over the last 15 to 20 years, where the market has been embraced by more and more countries, and where allowing businesses to succeed is understood as the key to success. We need successful companies to invest. We need successful banks to invest. We need companies that are interested in making a profit. We don't think that profit is a dirty word. We think that profit is an essential part of a successful market-based economy. We also think that it requires a strong partnership with government and with the public sector in order to be successful in many developing countries. But I think we've seen this in all of the meetings that we've held this year. Yes, we're looking for better terms and better interest rates from banks. We're looking for more help from government for blended finance, where that's what's going to be required to make major infrastructure investments. But fundamentally, I think that many countries have come to terms with the fact that they're not going to be able to do what's required to join the ranks of the highly developed countries without allowing the marketplace to succeed. And that, I think, is a very important development, and one that we should all be clearer in our minds is the case.
Thank you, Mr. Bob Ray. That's much appreciated. So if I understand you correctly, it is truly a joint responsibility to create that coalition of the willing in order to ensure progress to move forward with regards to achieving the UN SDGs. So before wrapping this all up, of course, we first move over to Mrs. Sanda Ojambo from the UN Global Compact. So Sanda, we've just finished the FFD4 in Seville, where many discussions actually took place with governments and the private sector. What, in your view, are the key takeaways from Seville and the role that the private sector plays with regards to the development of the UN SDGs? Please, Mrs. Sanda.
Thank you, Sonia, and really greetings to all of the panelists here, good friends, colleagues, and partners in this important agenda. You know, Ambassador Ray, thank you for setting out this really important piece that it is absolutely critical to have functioning markets, you know, job creation, investment in economies, and just a market that really allows the private sector and private finance to flow and invest in where it's needed to be. The Financing for Development Conference in Seville was indeed landmark to the extent that there was significant private sector participation, but also I think that the desire to really bring the public and private together in a way that would really allow for this $4 trillion annual gap for the SDGs to be met. It was evident, you know, private sector positioning, private sector resources, skills, innovation and investment are needed to turn this ambition into action. What I heard most from private sector players who were there was that they're not necessarily seeking to fill the financing gap to its entirety. What they want is to find avenues where private capital can invest substantially in the SDGs and indeed have a strong return on investment. As we said, profit is not a dirty word. Private sector capital is looking for places where it will be rewarded for its investment. Creating that enabling environment is absolutely critical. You know, there was a strong communique that was issued. If I was just to highlight some of the elements of the communique, the first was fixing some of the financial structures and regulations and systems that really impede that flow of private capital or make private development financing difficult. So the financial architecture, issues such as risk ratings, premium biases that limit access and affordability of capital, particularly to low and middle income countries. There was questions about de-risking and innovating around the type of finance, blended finance, debt swaps, special drawing rights, sustainability bonds, green bonds, blue bonds, all these instruments that we're yet to see at the scale and scope that we need for sustainable development and development finance, but also a key call to look at how we can support smaller businesses and underserved markets because they're so critical to the economic growth that we need. At Global Compact, we co-hosted events with the Global Investors for Sustainable Development, with the Principles for Responsible Investment, and so great alignment around issues such as sovereign debt, corporate bond issuance as well. And it was just really important to understand the leadership role within the private sector and the incentives that were needed. I just want to close with three key things that I think were absolutely important from Seville. The first was unlocking blended finance at scale. So important to be able to do that. The second was innovation in financial instruments and robust government frameworks, as Ambassador Ray has talked about. And really the third was these strong strategic partnerships. Governments can no longer do it alone. The private sector won't do it alone, but we need to find that mix and that balance when they both work together, or private sector works separately and government separately to deliver what we need to deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanda. And indeed, only together we can make it happen. Bringing together knowledge and finance and expertise together, of course. So, Roberto, you just finished off the International Labour Conference where topics like platform economy, informality, occupational health, and AI issues were discussed. What, in your view, were in fact the most impactful areas where business can address the decent work agenda? And are there any risks that policy issues could hinder job growth?
Yes, it was already 1 month ago that we finished the International Labour Conference. I was also in Seville. It's a pleasure to be jointly with you virtually. Even I'm now in India. And precisely, I would like to strengthen what both the ambassador and Sandra has highlighted, the need for partnerships, efficient partnerships, public and private, international organizations and the private sector. And I want to emphasize that because that focus was not there before. I mean, if you realize how challenging it is to get into the logic of an efficient partnership, you will realize also how impactful it can be. If you tell me what are the areas in which we as business need to do better, need to engage also to have more impactful achievements in terms of the decent work agenda, I would very much single out at the front something which we agreed already in 1998, and is what we call fundamental principles and rights at work. And I want to remind everybody that this idea of fundamental principles and rights at work was born in a moment where globalization was booming up in 1998, when we had all the WTO and global multilateralism, trade agreements, and there was a real need, and there was an initiative of business to establish a basis on non-discrimination, on child labor, on forced labor, on freedom of association, collective bargaining, but at the end of the day, the basic of working conditions, and now health and safety. On all those areas, we really need to be credible at business, but also we need to work much better with institutions. It's totally unacceptable that we live now in a world where still 60% of the total occupied population is in the informal sector, and those basics are not at all guaranteed. It's also very worrying that right now that we are looking at what is now the present of work, not the future of work, with the AI transforming and also digitalization transforming the way we work, the way we make business, we still don't have a strong skills agenda in our policy frameworks. The skills anticipation is not there in public, but I would say also in private policies. And that's where we can do better in terms of collaborating and in terms of bringing together the different stakeholders. It's also great that we are also now liaising with UNDESA, with the UN Global Compact, and also thank you also for this extraordinary partnership. We need to spread that engagement at local level, at domestic level. I finish because I'm also disciplined in terms of my time. In terms of what are the two elements that can hinder progress on that area, I believe that on one side, we need to do better in terms of regulations. It's very often the case that regulations are not precisely enabling companies to get the decent work agenda there. And also, I really believe that we need to overcome a fearful approach in terms of the new technologies. We understand also the concerns, and we are also very much integrating this concern into our daily life and daily activity. But at the same time, there is a strong need also to look forward with a very constructive approach on how we integrate AI for more qualitative jobs and a more decent work agenda. That also applies to the digitalization. Okay, so that would be in my 4 minutes, more or less the main message I would like to transmit to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. And moving over to Peter Bakker, actually from the World Business Council of Sustainable Development. So Peter, you've been very engaged with the business community to tackle inequality, and many of your members actually are fully committed and involved. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for impact in addressing the decent work agenda in line with your work? And what policy issues should be addressed? And Peter, I apologize, but we have to keep it short in order to respect enough time for the next session. So Peter, please, the floor is yours.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for having me, Sonia, and great to see my fellow panelists, and even better to hear them all talk about the need to collaborate with business to work forward. I think that's critical and super important on this agenda. I think it's good to understand the context in which business is operating is changing fast, and business is trying to respond to that. Obviously, geopolitically, anti-woke, economic uncertainties all make for a lot of stress and I would say distraction in boardrooms from the agenda we're talking about today. What I basically see happen there is the conversation has now moved from, do we set more commitments or do we really focus on change, on execution? How do we get these stories better disclosed to financial markets? How do we really make sure that sustainability is driving competitiveness? And most importantly, and that links to your question, how do we make this a people-centric agenda? And so indeed, 4 years ago now, we started the Business Commission to tackle inequality. Sanda was one of our commissioners there, published a report about 1.5 years ago in which we said inequality is a systemic risk, will become a business risk, and there are 10 action areas that businesses need to focus on implementing. And if you pick out 2 that are most directly linked to decent work, one is, of course, the just transition. We all talk about just transition, but do we all agree what that actually means is a big question. And the other one is very direct, and probably the most direct one is living wage, living income. That's where I see a lot of momentum. It's, like I said, the most tangible impact. It provides people with dignity, with economic stability. The reality today is even if you are employed, that doesn't protect you against poverty. There's more than 1 billion people who are employed but do not have a decent living standard. And that, while there is a clear business case to pay a living wage, so employee engagement goes up, resilience in supply chain improves, trust in brand improves. And if you look into the work that the Living Wage Foundation has done, there's lots of statistics that show that consumers, employees, as well as investors value this. Well, it's great to see Sanda, because the Forward Faster initiative in the Global Compact by now has 650 companies have made commitments to put living wage into their supply chains by 2030. More than 400 of those companies are working on action plans to make this not just in their companies, but work with their suppliers up and downstream to get it included. But there's a lot of work left to be done because the World Benchmarking Alliance calculates that only 4% of all companies in the world have these type of targets. So like the other panelists have said, collaboration, co-design is really the way forward. And I have a very simple ambition that, in 5 years from now, just like if a company today does not have a net zero target, we do not think that's a serious company. If a company 5 years from now doesn't have a living wage target, it's no longer a serious company. And if we all aim for that star, we'll make a lot of progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you to all my panelists. The message is loud and clear. We need more partnerships. We need more efficient and constructive partnerships in order to realize the UN SDGs by 2030. So while we are approaching the last minutes of this first session, I'm going to invite each and every one of you to share with us your thoughts on the final minutes. And please let us know what 2 policy issues, in your view, whether they are drivers or obstacles, in fact, need to be addressed in order to advance the business contributions to the UN SDGs. I will start with Ambassador Bob Ray, please.
Just unmuting myself. I would say 2 things very briefly. One is I can't overemphasize the importance for both governments and for companies to create an environment of stability and coherence and trustworthiness in what you're setting out across the full domain of your policies, so that everybody knows what your policies are, you know what they are, you're not going to suddenly change them, you're not going to abruptly throw them into the garbage. And I think this notion of stability and coherence, these ideas are very, 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 very important. And I think, on the other hand, I think the biggest blockage to making real progress is even simpler. I think it's fear. I think there are governments that are fearful of what private enterprise on a large scale might mean and might do. And I think there are many, many companies that are fearful of, why would we invest in country X or Y? We're not sure about them, we're afraid of them. And I think whenever I hear people say, I'm afraid, I don't know, this might happen to become, and this risk aversion and fear, I think is the other big obstacle. So try to create stability, try to create confidence, and try to get rid of fear. I think if we do that, we make a lot of progress.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. That's much appreciated. Sanda, can I invite you to share your views?
Thank you. I will summarize briefly. Ambassador Ray has said one. I think there's a need to just level the playing field. Regulations, incentives, predictability, signals, stability needed in markets. The second I just want to talk about pertains specifically to areas where sustainability reporting and standards are so in flux, a lot going on around harmonization, alignment, metrics on sustainability reporting. I think this needs to be solved sooner rather than later to reduce reporting fatigue, inconsistency, and again, allow SDG or sustainability aligned investments to flow. Those would be my two. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanda. That is much appreciated. We're moving forward with Roberto. Please, can you share your thoughts on this topic? Sorry, Roberto, you are muted.
Sorry. Very quickly. First, as highlighted by the ambassador, I would very much agree that we need to build trust in terms of the partnerships, whether that means also stability, but also a kind of common language. It's not yet there, even though we are more and more aligned with the SDG. I think the language of business still is a different language from the language of many other international organizations and also public sector. We need to do a lot of work there. And also to help with the narrative. I mean, you refer to fear, and it's true, the fear is there, the mistrust is there. So that's one thing. Second, I think that as business, and I'm telling that and knowing what is my responsibility, representing more than 150 business organizations in more than 140 countries, is credibility. We have to be credible as business. I mean, we cannot, advocate also for decent work agenda you were referring, if we are not leading with example, okay? At least on these areas that I refer to. And thirdly, and that's the part I would ask also the other stakeholders, especially the public sector, we need regulations, institutions, and policies that really enable business, especially small and medium business, to grow for decent work. This is not, it's far away from being there, okay? Those are the three areas. So trust building, credibility from our side, and policies and regulations that enable business to grow.
Thank you, Roberto. That's loud and clear. Peter Bakker, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All that my other panelists have said is true. And what I would add to that is we need to realize that we need a dynamic policy creation environment. It's no longer true that regulators set the policy and the private sector and other actors have to follow. The transitions that we now need to move through are not going to be linear. They're going to be all over the place. And we need to adapt and provide incentives to change fast. And that can only be done if we sit at the same table, trust each other, and have open dialogues on how to create those incentives. Thank you.
Absolutely. So if I'm summarizing this, it's about building trust. It's about speaking a common language. It's about creating that credible narrative, which appeals to both the business and as well as the government's policies. It's about creating dynamic policies that enables a favorable environment for all businesses, including SMEs, to thrive, in fact. And it's very much about ensuring that the transitions that we are facing are being met in an adaptive manner that allows flexibility on all sides in order to meet those challenges, in fact. With that, I see that there is some, I think, some time for some Q&A. We have one Q&A, one question in the chat. Hello, panelists. Thank you for the valuable session. This is Joe Bayer from Bangladesh, a UNICEF youth advocate. I have two questions. How can the global business community collaborate with youth-led initiatives to promote digital literacy and SDG-based employment, especially in the global south? And the second question is, what accountability measures will ensure private sector climate commitments align with youth-driven climate action ahead of the 2025 World Social Summit? Can I interest any of my panelists to address these questions in 1 minute?
Well, the one on accountability, I think, just to the point that Sander made, we need to quickly move to one global baseline by which all businesses in the world are being held accountable. ISSB S1 and S2 are the framework that we should all apply to. That, is the clearest framework that looks both at the emissions as well as looking forward at risks. And that could be aligned to the youth initiatives as well.
Thank you. And I think I saw Ambassador Ray wanting to come in as well.
Just to reinforce and say that I think that all businesses have to be sensitive to the fact that in many countries we have an incredible influx of young people onto the labor market, and we all talk about this question of youth employment. The fact is, youth has to be employed by business. It's not going to be employed by governments around the world. It's going to be employed by businesses around the world. So businesses have taken an interest in this labor market because it's growing, it's important, and it's in everyone's interest to give young people a chance. So but I would agree very much with what Peter has just said, and that is that we need to have a simpler description of what social accountability and responsibility really means. We can't have 28 different criteria and all the things that we've. I mean, even the SDGs themselves, when you get into the details, are too complicated in setting out how they are to be applied. We can't just micromanage from the UN. We have to be prepared to just steer and let everybody else row, and let everybody else make the decisions that are going to be made on the ground. But this sensitivity to this youth explosion in some countries, Bangladesh is one. Many African countries where the young population is growing very quickly. It's a place of opportunity, but it's also a place where we can't allow a whole generation to go underemployed. So there's work to be done there.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Roberto first, and then moving over to Sander. You each have about 45 seconds. Thank you.
Youth employment in the global south is the main employment challenge. It is very difficult to make a distinction. And if you look at the global south, especially again the informal sector, and a young person in the informal sector needs a different approach, which is still not there. So the best way to connect from a global business perspective is look much better, understand better what is the reality of a youth person, of a young person in the informal sector, and how really the policies and regulations can help them also to get into the formal sector. There are many initiatives, many innovation that have been here in India based on using digital tools is an extraordinary way also to get them access to finance, to get them also skilled, etc. There is a need for alignment, and we really believe that we can do much better aligning with the young people, especially in the informal sector, in the youth. And we are also committed to that agenda. As for the accountability, I strongly believe that the best way to make business accountable in a much beyond simple regulation, more harmonized. We have been all this proliferation on regulation and ESG, but also in many other areas, is to build a strong business case. For me, that's really the driver of success in terms of aligning objectives with the SDGs, but also in terms of having much more impactful effects in terms of the decent work agenda and other areas.
Thank you, Roberto. Apologies. Sander, Please.
Yeah, accountability, sometimes, there's a lot going on around harmonizing and alignment. And I just wanted to just reflect on the fact that accountability really calls us to be accountable to society. I know that while we were working on metrics and making sure that science is in there, and I think that's where the youth voice is really important. Everything that we do, the 2030 agenda, business agendas, are really geared towards this generation of the person that asked this question. So I think it's really important to put in mind that while, we might focus on putting forward a report, aligning with science, very, very important. But this is about how businesses are positioning for the future. So that youth voice must be at the table, must be in consideration around strategy, and really it must be considered when we think about business sustainability going forward.
Thank you all. Thank you to my distinguished panelists, Ambassador Ray, Sanda, Roberto, and Peter, of course, for your insightful and action-oriented insights. So we heard today about the critical importance of decent work, inclusive employment, reducing inequalities, the living wage, and not just as aspirations, but mainly as responsibilities that require stronger partnerships between business and government. With that in mind, we are now shifting our focus from the global policy landscape to a more practical, on-the-ground best practice examples, where policy and business innovation are already intersecting to accelerate impacts. Our next session, Country Showcases Voices from the Ground, Innovation that Inspires Change, will spotlight country-level best practice example and collaborations that are shaping responsive and inclusive development pathways. I'm pleased to welcome Mrs. Tolulupa Louis Tamoka, Chief of Government Relations and Africa at the UN Global Compact. And Mrs. Tolulupa will provide examples from the ground on the Global Compact Country Network and the government collaboration on the VNRs. It is over to you to moderate the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia, and greetings to everyone online. I'm happy to be here presenting the next session of the program. Colleagues, guests, in the next 45 minutes, we'll hear from businesses and government leaders from around the world on how the private sector are agents of change that are contributing to government's efforts to advance the SDGs. As Sonia mentioned, my name is Tolu Louis Tamoka. I'm Chief Government Relations and Africa at the UN Global Compact Office. I'm here in New York. I'm very thrilled and excited to be joining me very shortly, speakers from India, from Indonesia, from Finland, as well as from Ghana. And these speakers will share their stories of practical collaboration, country-level innovation, and lessons learned in advancing the 2030 agenda. I'd like to start by inviting a reflection from our first speaker on this second session, Antique Todi, who is Chief Sustainability Officer of the Mahindra Group, a multinational conglomerate headquartered in Mumbai. Todi, here's my question to you. Mahindra Group has shown deep commitments to the SDGs, and it's clear that the SDGs are deeply embedded in the group's core business strategy. How has Mahindra Group gone about aligning business operations with the SDGs, specifically those under the review this year, SDG 5, SDG 3, 8, 14, and 17? And what do you see as your company's role in supporting India's progress towards meeting the SDGs? Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, firstly, for having me here. Let me start by saying that the Mahindra Group is a large conglomerate with about an 80-year history, and we operate in 20 plus different industries. And to be able to integrate multiple SDGs into our business objectives starts at the very top, which is what is the purpose of the company. And we define our purpose as driving positive change in the life of our stakeholders, very consciously, not just shareholders, but stakeholders. And at the same time, we also truly believe that we will rise only when we enable others to rise. The core philosophy behind this being that as a for-profit company, there are certain obligations to shareholders, but at the same time, taking a long-term view, we truly believe that only by keeping the interest of all stakeholders, which includes the community, the customers, the employees, and including the global ecosystem, the government, etc. Only then can we truly build a sustainable company in the long run. To specifically answer the question with respect to the multiple SDGs, so right from talking about good health and well-being, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, water particularly important, and lastly partnerships. I think all of these subjects are very important. And when I was discussing this question internally with my team, they were kind enough to put together almost a 4-page note for me with numerous examples of what's happened in different parts of the company, some of which I'm deeply familiar with in playing a role in executing, but also a lot of examples that were new to me. But instead of trying and pointing out specific examples, I want to specifically stress on SDG 17, which is partnerships for the goals. And the reason to specifically emphasize on that is because very often in the corporate context, while we often take actions for things which are directly related to the company and where there's a business case, either an economic risk case to be built, most companies often act. But what gets missed out are things which are common public goods in some way, where it's not just the responsibility of one single company, but of an industry coming together to do something, or of the supply chain ecosystem or your stakeholders to come together. And increasingly, with matters of environment, water, social goals, what we are realizing is that that is one area where we are struggling to make sufficient progress. And that is something as a theme that we have been focusing on a lot lately. And to give you very specific examples, as Mahindra, we are a major purchaser of tires. We buy about $1 billion of tires every year. And while there is a lot of regulation that has come to update the tire ecosystem with respect to the environmental and social footprint, but even then progress is slow. And we recently organized a conversation where we brought 40 different organizations, all the tire OEMs, non-profits, other value chain partners, to come together and really deliberate on what will help the industry grow. This was not an obligation for us, but something that we felt was a missing white space. And that's the point I want to really emphasize, is that increasingly large companies in particular, which have a certain amount of influence both with their value chain partners, but also in the regulatory ecosystem, they need to take a slightly broader view and enable larger ecosystem solutions, which can really help accelerate progress on the SDGs. Let me pause there. Thank you. Tolu, I believe you're still on mute.
Yeah, right there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tony, for your contribution from the Mahindra Group and your clarification on how you're working to achieve the SDGs through a long-term vision and view, and with partnerships within your large ecosystems as well. It's now my pleasure to turn to the panel we have during this session. We have our panelists from Indonesia, from Finland, and from Ghana, who will dive deeper into examples of innovation and partnership between government and the private sector as it relates to the VNR processes. Before we dive into the discussions, I'd like to start by introducing our panelists and giving each one of them a moment to briefly introduce themselves. So we'll start with a panelist from Indonesia. Please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Tolu. I'm Junardi. I'm from the United Nations Global Compact Network Indonesia, and I'm also running another business, which is Rajawali Corporations. But here I'm working together with our partner here from the Ministry of National Planning agencies who will be also with us together.
Hi, good morning to all of you. My name is Leonardo Teguh Sambodo. I'm currently the Deputy Minister for Food Affairs, Natural Resources, and Environment. And the Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas, serve as the national coordinator of SDGs implementation in Indonesia. And our core mandate is to transform the global 2030 agenda into tangible reality for every Indonesian. And happy to join this forum.
Thank you so much, Sambodo. We'll turn to Finland now. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. First of all, many thanks for inviting us. We are here with Taina at the same room. My name is Satu Kuoppamäki. I'm the board chair of Global Compact Network Finland and also work at one of the biggest financial companies in Finland, OP Financial Group, as the head of ESG. Thank you for having us here.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Taina Kulmala. I come from Prime Minister's Office, Finland. I work there as head of government policy unit, and we work with the implementation and the follow-up of the government program, and also in many coordinated roles of the government priorities, like the sustainable development on national level.
Thank you, Taina. Now we move to Ghana.
Thank you, Chief Tolu. Hello, everyone. My name is Mina Pokiajuman. I am the Participant Engagement and Outreach Manager for the Country Network. Thank you.
And can we have also a government representative from Ghana introduce themselves? Thank you, Mr. Boateng. The line is a bit patchy, but we hope we'll hear you better when you intervene in the discussions. Great. So with the introductions done, and we'd like to move now to the engagements for this session. And our first question goes to the board chair, Pak Junadi. Country Network Indonesia's board chair, Mr. Junadi. You are one of the 11 curators for the selection of corporate and organizational inputs by Bappenas on its VNR process. And for those who don't know Bappenas, it's the Indonesian Ministry of National Development Planning. It's now the fourth VNR that the Country Network has contributed to. Congratulations on that. And in light of your experience with the Country Network and as a business leader yourself, how do you see the Indonesian businesses aligning closer to the government's development priorities in your country? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Okay. First of all, I would like to say also that the Global Compact Network Indonesia has been working very closely and play active roles in supporting the government of Indonesia, especially also working together with Ministry of National Planning and in promoting and encouraging the business in order the achievement of the Indonesian SDG targets, and also aligning so much with the country priorities, while at the same time also defining the specific strategies and goals based on the industries and particular business requirements. Regarding the VNR, okay, I have the privilege that particularly I've been one of the curator in the selections of these corporations and other institutions, not only the business, for the inclusion in the voluntary national review, okay, from VNR number 1 up to now coming the VNR number 4, okay, the fourth VNR, which is part of the basically deriving from the work of this SDG Action Award that has been initiated by the National Planning Board Okay, and now it's like in the fourth round already. This is basically conducted annually, and I have the privilege to become the jury for this one. So all of this, not only from the business, but all institutions. Okay, and it is something like more than 500 every year for us to do the sex elections. So I'm also invited to the VNR consultation review. Okay, for the preparation of this VNR report as well too. Now, regarding these, how the business can engage and how the business can align with the government focus. We look at basically what is the global compact in a work as a focus, what are the government focus, and what are the business focus. So it's basically three elements for this one. So we decided to have working together with business in three what I call SDG thematic focus. Number one is what we call the better living environment, which cover the climate and living underwater, and also the trying to get the resilience and inclusive business, which is covering the SDG 5 and 8, and also governance, partnership, and policy advocacy, because this is very important. Actually, this is the basis for us, which is the SDG 16 and 17. So action has been by, through the accelerators moving forward. Okay, we work on the women empowerment, business and human rights, Ocean Center, okay, and then also the seaweed project, food projects, and so forth. So that's what we are working together with business to improve and get the opportunity, but at the same time, something aligned with the focus and strategy of the government itself. So we have been working together with not only the National Planning Board, also the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, Ministry of Business and Human Rights, Ministries of the Food, Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, and many other ministries, basically, how we get engaged together between the business and industries with the government ministries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Janadi, Country Network Chair, Indonesia. I'd like to now move on to the government representative from Indonesia, and would like to hear from you, Mr. Sambodo, from a government perspective, and as the national coordinator of the SDG implementation in country. What role has the private sector played in this year's VNR process? What message does the government have to its private sector in terms of achieving the collective ambition of the SDGs in your country, Indonesia? Over to you.
Thank you, moderator. In 2025 Voluntary National Review, this is Indonesia's fourth submission to the high-level political forum, and we emphasize the growing role of the private sector in accelerating SDGs implementation. The important point is that this fourth VNR lies in its consistency in reporting, progress tracking, and inclusive stakeholder engagement, demonstrating that Indonesia does not view the VNR as one-time exercise, but also as a continuous learning and improvement process. So for that, we apply a specific methodology that we actively engage a diverse range of stakeholders, including the businesses and philanthropic sectors, through hybrid consultation forums, both online and offline. These key groups were specifically invited to participate in discussion, particularly for the 5 priority goals, SDG 3, 5, 8, 14, and 17. During this year preparation of VNR, the private sector, especially through the Indonesia Global Compact Network, played an active role by providing substantive input to shape the report. And we hope that this can also allow us to improve not only that private sector support us in terms of financing, but also through knowledge sharing, innovation, and data support. A significant aspect of the private sector's contribution has been through the submission of good practices. We successfully collected a remarkable 175 best practices, showcasing the diversity of initiatives across various sectors and regions, including from small and medium enterprises. These submissions were rigorously curated, and this enriched our VNR narrative with concrete evidence-based experiences, particularly including from the private sectors. Beyond the VNR, actually, we have been working with private sector closely, particularly in drafting our national action plan for SDGs and their relevant roadmaps. And as Pak Junardi also mentioned, that we are working also for SDG Action Awards with the hope that there will be a growing recognition that our collective efforts are important to achieve our collective goals. And through the corporate social responsibility regulation, we also promote on how private sectors can work together proactively to integrate SDGs into their core business strategies. So basically, our message is one shared responsibility and strengthened partnership, that achieving the 2030 agenda is not solely a government task. It requires the concentrated efforts from all stakeholders. And we encourage private sector that it is better to move beyond philanthropy to embed sustainability in the operations, particularly in supply chains, for example, and product development. And maybe we can share impacts openly, inspiring others and fostering accountability. And we are looking forward to continue promoting frameworks for better integration of private sector data into national reporting, and to engage a dialogue, for example, using the platforms such as Indonesia Business Council for Sustainable Development and the Indonesia Global Compact Network. And we have been working, for example, with Indonesia Global Compact Network by launching the ocean centers, focusing on the safety for our maritime sectors. And of course, to leverage business opportunity, particularly working on health, gender equality, decent work, and marine sustainability. And invest in green technology enhanced data system is important for us to work together to promote transparency, accountability, and monitoring of SDGs. And focus on the leave no one behind principle, that to make sure that private sector initiative can contribute to equitable growth and reach the most vulnerable segments of our society. And we believe that working together with private sector, we can foster innovation and strengthen our multi-stakeholder partnerships. And Indonesia, with that, can indeed achieve our vision that Indonesia will grow inclusively, advancing sustainable and resilient development in the future. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pak Sambodo, for your inputs and for also informing us of how private sector is very much embedded in the work of the government around achieving the SDGs, not only on the BNR processes, but also through the implementation of your National Action Plan on the SDGs, and also the focus around the work on the ocean's footprint as well. Thank you so much. We'll now turn to move to Europe. And I'd like to turn to Finland for an example from there. We have with us Country Network Finland Board Chair, Ms. Satu. And Finland is a third-time BNR presenter, and the Country Network has also been a long-standing partner of the government on producing its BNRs. How have the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact been helpful in equipping the business community in Finland in collectively achieving almost 86% of the SDGs in country? I'd like to hear from you, Ms. Satu. Over to you.
Thank you. I have to highlight that Finland is, for the 5th year in a row, the top performing country in meeting SDGs, with our 86% of reaching the goals. And I'm very proud of the work that we have done together in our country. And I think one element, or one, may I say, secret behind that is that we have a long history of multi-stakeholder engagement. And I think our network companies and the whole private sector and civil society in Finland are the key player that the country has been able to achieve just an amazing goal. Also, Global Compact Network has fostered collaboration between businesses, government, and civil society in Finland. And this approach has accelerated progress on many SDGs, like quality education, gender equality, and climate action. If I may give a concrete example of climate action and Finnish companies, for example, almost 200 companies in Finland, and Finland is a quite small country within a bit over 5 million people living in Finland. Almost 200 Finnish companies has either set or committed to set science-based climate target. And globally, the amount of those companies is about 11,000 companies that have committed or set, and nearly 200 of those are Finnish companies. Finnish companies, especially those who are Global Compact members, but also others, have a long history and values among sustainability. But our Global Compact companies have integrated our 10 principles covering human rights, labor rights, environmental issues, and anti-corruptions in their core strategies. So Global Compact and 10 principles are not only another or just a sustainability initiative, but universal framework, and that makes it a business guideline, and the principles are in the core in companies' sustainability agendas. Our Global Compact networks supports not only large companies, but also SMEs. We help them to understand and implement the 10 principles. And this broad engagement has amplified the impact across sectors and regions in Finland. While in Europe, we have also regulation in sustainability reporting. Also, UN Global Compact has encourages companies to report their performance, and Finnish firms have embraced this, and we have built a culture of transparency, and gives also ongoing improvement that supports SDG tracking and achievements. I would like to conclude that 10 principles, together with the way we operate in Finland, has been enabler to great results we have achieved in Finland. Thank you.
Much, Satu, for that background on how Finland has done really well around the progress recorded on the SDGs and building a culture of transparency and also tracking performance. I'd like to turn to the government representative with you, Taina Kumala, and would like to hear from you as Ministerial Advisor of the Prime Minister's Office. How can private sector further drive the ambition to achieve the rest of the outstanding goals in Finland? Over to you.
Thank you, moderator. In Finland, the whole of society approach creates space for common work towards achieving SDGs. And as Satu mentioned, we have been very successful in this. We are a small country with high trust on institution and governance, and in the interaction between business and public sector happens in many ways and at different levels. But good interaction and good relationships are not enough, and it's crucial that we have well-established platforms and processes to have dialogue with different sectors of society. And I think that these platforms and processes are also a way to drive the ambition together on sustainable development. A concrete example from Finnish perspective is a National Commission on Sustainable Development, where business sector is strongly present, and UN Global Compact Finland is an advisory body. Commission brings together different stakeholders, builds a shared vision and strategy for sustainable development in Finland, and acts as a driver of change itself. And it also provides an open tool for different stakeholders, also companies, to establish their own commitments to support implementation of SDGs. And this is an internet-based tool. I would like to raise up some concrete examples from Commission's action plan. First, strengthening the knowledge base on the negative externalities of Finland's sustainable development work. This exactly is one of the biggest challenges for Finland, as we have high negative spillover effects. To tackle this, we need even more closer cooperation with academia and business sector. Business sector plays a significant role in piloting and testing different ways to collect data on spillover effects, and we hope to see more willingness to co-create this with academia. I believe that the digitalization and AI may help us in these questions, and this was also pointed out by business sector in our VNR. The other theme, which I see as a concrete driver for change, is an action point to identify legislation and other steering instruments that strengthen the sustainability transition at different levels and sectors, and identify potential conflicts in steering. For example, when preparing legislative initiatives or other steering instrument in government, we really need to remember that the deep understanding of real impacts lies in the companies, and we need actively seek cooperation to make best evidence-based solutions for society as a whole, also for business sector. This can happen in various ways, like open preparation, co-creation, open hearings or consultation, and by active sharing of information. When preparing our VNR, we included a new component, giving voice to business community. The VNR itself has been a good process where business has raised their concerns and hopes in frame of SDGs. And these messages will be taken into account in other governmental processes. Personally, I think that one of the most significant points from business sector in our VNR was the need for predictability of legislation. I think that business sector can support long-term and coherent policy making also by open dialogue and database. Fortunately, many companies and active business community are already leading the way toward more sustainable practices. When the private sector, and especially pioneering companies, take the lead, the public sector and politicians tend to listen closely to their messages and needs. Concrete way to speed up the implementation of the agenda are business-based solutions, which are easily and quickly scalable in critical areas like the life below water or good health. The role of public sector is then to create business environments where new solutions can be scaled up effectively to support sustainable development, and this positive circle boosts the achievement of the SDGs. In conclusion, I'd say that the private sector can help to drive ambition with data and concrete solutions, and being a part of the national platform and processes where dialogue happens and shared understanding emerge. At the same time, public sector must remain open, ensure that there are platforms to open dialogue, and secure inclusive processes exist in all levels of governance. Thank you.
Very much, Taina, for your contribution and also for sharing with us the importance of scalable business solutions. Data from private sector is key, but also having private sector as part of the dialogue. Thank you so much. We've heard from Indonesia, we've heard from Finland. I will now turn to Ghana and hear from the Country Network Ghana And we have Mina, who is the Partnership Engagement and Outreach Manager, the country network there. And so, Mina, we'd like to hear from you. As the government moves to introduce sub-national SDG reviews, and as these open up, important spaces for local action also emerge. From the country network's perspective, how are you supporting businesses to engage meaningfully in these local SDG efforts? Over to you, Mina.
Thank you. So for us at the Country Network Ghana, this is our first time that we are directly contributing to the VNR process here in Ghana. It started when we held our flagship CEO breakfast meeting last year, when our CEOs were asking the questions, how are our contributions reflected at the national level? So as a secretariat, it became our responsibility to look at the ways and means that the contributions of our participants will be reflected at the national level. So knowing that the National Development Planning Commission is the state agency that coordinates everything Ghana does in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals, we reached out to them and they made us aware that this year Ghana is working on our VNR. And so for that reason, we expressed to them that we want to support and contribute directly to this process. So with that said, our first way we supported the process was fostering partnership between the commission and businesses. So as I mentioned earlier, the CEO breakfast meeting, some businesses pledged their support and commitment to the process once they are engaged. So we worked with the commission to connect them to these businesses to get some kind of support, whether in cash and kind, to support the process in Ghana. Then aside the fostering of the partnership, we realized that there was a limited knowledge of the VNR process within the business community. Then there was the need to create a platform that would encourage knowledge sharing regarding the VNR process. And so the first point of call was to invite or engage our participants to participate in the workshops, the several workshops that the commission held as part of the processes of putting together our report. And so we had about 5 of our member companies participating in the workshop for the private sector, which was organized by the commission. But we realized that just 5 members out of the 50 over 40 plus participants that we have. So there is a need to call a meeting for all our participants to be in the room to also get to know of the VNR process and to see how as businesses they can contribute to it. So we in May hosted, as part of our Sustainable Finance Summit, invited the commission to come take our members through what the VNR process is, and as businesses, how they can contribute to the process. And from that summit, we got to know that the businesses can contribute by providing business cases. So providing data on the projects as businesses they've implemented to support the data that government has already collected. And so we had some of our members getting the template and filling the data to support the works that the government has already done. And to ensure that there is continuity in the participation of our businesses in the VNR process, we have also created a similar template to collate the projects and the data that are within the priority areas of government. And so in the subsequent VNR, the NDPC team will not spend much time collating data from businesses anymore, because we had already collated it, because we have the template pending and we've already shared with our members to put those data together. So hopefully in the next 2 years, when Ghana is going for a review, all the data they need from the private sector, particularly our participants, will be readily available. And last week, we launched the report here in Ghana, and the aim of the network is also to help in the dissemination of the report, so that businesses get to know how Ghana is positioned when it comes to the sustainable development goals and how businesses like our members are also contributing to Ghana's effort. So that's basically how the country network, we have been supporting businesses and even the National Development Planning Commission to roll out the VNR process here in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mina, for your contribution and for sharing with us how the country network is working with NDPC, the National Development and Planning Commission in Ghana, to collate the views and perspectives from the private sector. We'd now like to hear from the Senior Planning Analyst at NDPC, Mr. Michael Boateng. It's saying Mr. Boateng, and we'd like to hear how Ghana has introduced the VNR SDG reviews and how this is happening at the subnational level, which is a great step indeed that deepens local engagement in Ghana. What are some of the lessons that the government has learned so far in working with businesses at the local level, and what other stakeholders at the local level are you engaged with to ensure that the SDG progress reaches all parts of society? Over to you.
Right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Yes, at the National Joint Planning Commission, our work review report was helped by the private sector in a number of ways. First of all, like Mina said, the network the compact network was very helpful to us. So we could connect with them and then engage the private sector in broad way. Apart from the private sector, we also engage with the CSOs and some other interested bodies that are interested in the SDGs. So about the lessons that we learned in engaging the private sector in this VNR process, the first one I would like to say is that it's always good to engage with umbrella bodies and networks. So just as Mina has already mentioned, engaging with the network helped us to easily reach out to the private sector in their numbers to be able to get some case studies from them and also some feedback from them that we can use to enrich the report. And this helps to extend inclusion in the VNR process, because ordinarily some of the companies, it may take us a long time to get them on board, but through the networks, we are easily able to do this. Apart from the Global Compact Network, we also engage with the Private Enterprise Federation of Ghana, and this is made up of 18 umbrella bodies. So engaging with them has also helped to bring on board a lot of the private sector groups that helped us to be able to put together the private sector side of our report. And then there's also one thing that we also realized, there's Ghana Club 100, and this is a ranking that is done by the Ghana Investment Promotion Center. So then we try to get to some of the companies that are on the Ghana Club 100 to also hear their stories out as case studies. And through these three bodies, so the network, the Global Compact Network, the Private Enterprise Federation, and the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Ghana Club 100, we're able to reach out to the private sector and we got their stories to use. Now, so the engagement with the umbrella bodies is very helpful. Now, number two, we also realize that you need to get to the individual private organizations to know their innovations. If you just engage with them at the level of the umbrella bodies, some of the innovations may be maxed out by the averages or by the general reporting that you may hear. So we also realize that after getting the private sector entities through their networks, it's also good to engage with them individually to know the individual, that we need to tell about or we need to scale up as a country to help accelerate the SDGs in the country. And so it was a very good thing for us to do. Now, we also realize it is good to connect with already existing networks. And you realize that Mina, in her delivery, mentioned that the network is currently putting together more case studies, so that next time when we NDPC tries to reach out to the private sector to get their case studies, we don't have to overstretch ourselves, and we can easily get it. So it's always good to connect with networks in the SDG ecosystem, and it's very helpful. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is that the SDG innovations of individual companies can bring them to decision makers quickly.
May I ask you, you have half a minute left. We have two other speakers before we wrap up this session. Apologies.
Great. So because of the studies, they have access to decision makers in the country, and anytime we get the opportunity, we'll let them in so that we can know their thoughts first and to include in policy as far as the SDGs are concerned. Thank you very much.
And thanks for your contributions and, really opening the door for private sector to work closely with the government, not only at national level, but at subnational levels as well. Just before we conclude, we have two speakers, Country Network EDs. One is here with me, Naomi from Country Network Nigeria, and we also have Antonio, who is online from Country Network Switzerland. And I had the pleasure of being part of a collaboration between the two country networks during this current VNR process and during the high-level political forum week. So I'd like them to share some quick messages, 1 minute or less from each of them, on what they're hearing from private sector in their countries and how private sector is working with the government to be a force for good, and how this collaboration between the private sector and government is shaping the views and public policies as we work together to achieve the SDGs. Naomi, let me turn to you.
Okay. Thanks, Tolu. So from Nigeria, I'm happy to be participating in the VNR process this year. And the key message we consistently hear from the private sector is the urgent need for predictable and transparent enabling policy environment. I mean, it's clear that the Nigerian private sector, they're willing to engage to become a force for good and get involved with the SDGs, but they also need regulatory clarity and public-private collaboration that incentivizes their reward in involving in sustainable practices. And we're also seeing a strong call for infrastructure investment and investment in digital system. And this insight is what really mobilizes us or informs our multi-stakeholder dialogues with government and aligning their national development strategies with the SDGs, which will continue to reinforce the role of business in involvement in the sustainable development goals. So that's the report from Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Naomi. Over to you, Antonio, for your report from Switzerland.
I'm less optimistic in concern of how we implement the Agenda 2030. Switzerland as such is very strong, is very much advanced in Switzerland, but the biggest challenge are the spillovers. That's also for Finland and other countries one of the large challenges. Our overall footprint is 2.8, so our Swiss culture is not sustainable at all in the long run. The companies realize that, they see that partly. Let's say, I would say 30% have understood it and push it. And mainly the big ones do. Where we have the big challenge are the small and medium-sized companies who make the big cake of the economy. So that's for us the biggest challenge. What I hear from our participants, which are the advanced companies, let's be clear, it's not black and white. There are many companies who are caring for tariffs at the moment, for all what is happening. They do not care about the Agenda 2030. There are some who say, we are responsible, we invest, we want to push, and those are the ones we are counting on. And there it's clear what we need is a level playing field. And that is the most endangered in the political situation we are. So the expectation of our businesses to our government is to contribute to a multilateral system which is functioning And that's at the moment one of the biggest challenging, WTO, etc. The other one, we do not need a UN slang, I would say. We need a business language which businesses understand. Where is the business case? Why should companies invest? And that's the core. We have a huge community of companies who are in the investment sector, and they have a big potential. And then what several among you said, we need functional markets. That's one of the preconditions which are difficult at the moment. And we need clear and stable and simple regulations. That is the biggest challenge in Europe with all the regulations we have. So that's another requirement. And I finish with the last part. That's the positive one. We feel a strong need of companies, and now I include also the SMEs, the small ones, for knowledge. How should I do it? How do I measure my impact in ecological and social terms? How can networks like the UN Global Compact, World Business Council, and others support us? And they rather expect that from us than from the government, to be very clear, but that's the Swiss context. I stop here. I could tell much more, but I stop.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Antonio, for sharing the Swiss context with us. With that said, I would like to thank very much all the contributors to this session, and also really appreciate your contributions around partnerships and the importance of multilateral engagements with civil society, umbrella networks, with SMEs, as well as with the academia, but also pointing to the importance of data, of digital access, but also of dialogue and policy reform, and having that enabling policy environment to really bring private sector to advance the SDGs. With that said, it's my pleasure to pass the floor back to Sonia for the rest of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Tolelupe. And a sincere thank to all of our guest speakers and panelists from session 1 and session 2 for rich and grounded interventions today. What we have actually is coming together in today's conversations is actually the policy ambition and the practical innovation. So what we have seen is from the very high level intergovernmental insights to dynamic country level experiences, and actually wanting is really loud and clear. Progress on the SDGs is possible when business is not just at the table, but actually a full partner engaged in the discussions and in the delivery of the business solutions. We've heard today that topics like living wage, inclusive employment, decent work, digital transition, responsible business conduct, business and human rights, they are not just abstract policy ideals. They are tangible levers that can transform lives and strengthen resilience, especially when supported by the right frameworks and enabling environments. At the same time, today's Voices from the Ground have reminded us that innovative solutions are most often powerful when it's locally driven and co-created and inclusive, grounded in the lived realities of workers, communities, and entrepreneurs, of course. So as we move forward, let us carry today's spirit of today's session with us. It is the spirit of collaboration, accountability, and most of all, possibility. Let us build on this dialogue to unlock the full potential of business to accelerate progress on the 2030 agenda, not in isolation, but simply in co-creation and in partnership with the governments, workers, and civil society. Thank you once more to all of our speakers and panelists, and to all of the participants for your active engagement and your lively contributions in the chat function. The road ahead is demanding, we all know that, but with collective resolve and practical action, we can make it truly transformative and sustainable. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day.